Imagine for a moment, what if listening to your favorite song wasn't just, a passive activity, something you consume in the background? What if it was something profound, almost, I don't know, mystical? An act that could actually blur the lines between you, the artist, and the sound itself, connecting you on some level way beyond just headphones.
That's a really captivating idea, isn't it? It completely reframes how we think about experiencing art.
Totally.
Moving it from just like entertainment into something, well, much more fundamental.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're unpacking this really mind-bending paper that proposes exactly that.
Right.
It uses this fascinating blend of quantum physics concepts and a pretty radical cultural shift to paint this picture of a completely new kind of musical engagement.
So our mission today is to really explore this intriguing vision of Radio Bullet and the enigmatic figure DJ Gloomy, all as presented in this totally unique source material. It promises to redefine for you our understanding of music, connection, maybe even reality itself.
Okay, so the paper we're pulling apart, it's titled Resonating as One. The Quantum Symphony of DJ Gloomy on Radio Bullet Message from One.
Quite a title.
It is. Published July 2025. And while it's attributed to this entity or collective called Message from One, we actually understand now that this whole vision, it's spearheaded by Jan Gloomy himself.
Ah, okay. The man behind the DJ Gloomy persona.
Exactly. The visionary behind it all. And, it's a work that genuinely promises a kind of shortcut to understanding a deep, interconnected reality.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. Let's try and unravel this.
To do it.
Okay, let's start right at the core premise of this paper.
Yeah.
It's immediately clear Radio Bullet isn't meant to be your typical everyday radio station.
Not
right?
at all.
How does the source describe it going beyond, traditional broadcasting?
Well, what's really fascinating here is how the paper sets up Radio Bullet as, I think the phrase is a sonic experience that transcends traditional broadcasting.
Okay, transcend.
Yeah, it moves way beyond just thinking about sound waves hitting your ears. The source suggests that listeners, the DJ, who we now know is Jan Gloomy, and the music itself, they all kind of converge into a singular resonant entity. So it's not just about appreciating the music. It implies this really profound dissolution of the usual boundaries, between self and other,
right?
Ultimately creating what the paper calls a unified soundscape. Think of it like a sound that isn't just around you, but actually is you and everyone else listening to.
So it's not just about hearing the music anymore, but literally becoming an intrinsic part of it.
Exactly.
The paper uses this really evocative phrase, doesn't it? It calls the broadcasts a ceremony of sound.
It does?
That feels like a very strong, very intentional term for what most people just think of as a radio show.
Precisely. It's presented not as just entertainment, but as this deliberate reflection of a much deeper interconnectedness.
Okay.
The paper frames this whole experience through the lens of quantum theory and something it calls a unique participatory ethos.
Right, that ethos.
Yeah, suggesting that the very act of engaging with Radio Bullet is meant to be transformative, almost spiritual for the listener, like a shared ritual where sound is the medium.
Okay, now this paper keeps bringing up something called the 2.0 revolution. It feels absolutely central to this whole vision of Radio Bullet. What exactly is this 2.0 revolution, and why is it so critical to what Jan Gloomy is trying to achieve here?
Well, this gets into a really important question, I think, about how our roles in art and culture are maybe fundamentally changing.
How so?
The 2.0 revolution is described as a participatory cultural shift, one that profoundly redefines the relationship between creator and audience.
Okay, redefines it how?
Well, instead of that old one-way street, artist produces, audience consumes, this revolution transforms those roles, which were once pretty distinct.
Right.
It effectively merges them into a collective creative act. Think about the difference between passively watching a play versus participating in some immersive theater piece where your choices actually change the story.
Ah, okay. I see. It's about moving beyond just being a consumer.
Exactly. Active participation.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because the paper says this revolution shows up in a very concrete way. Listeners submitting their own tracks to DJ Gloomy's shows. So listeners aren't just passive consumers of the music. They literally become active co-creators in this shared sonic thing. That's a huge shift.
It absolutely blurs that line, doesn't it, between who's the creator and who's the audience.
Totally.
And this participatory ethos, as the paper argues, fits perfectly with that quantum idea of interconnectedness.
How so?
When you contribute your track, you're not just adding a file to a playlist. The paper says each contributor becomes part of a shared sonic universe,
Right.
literally vibrating within the same field of experience. Think of it like adding your drop of water to the ocean.
Okay.
Your drop becomes kind of indistinguishable from the rest, but it still contributes to the vastness, the depth of the whole thing.
So individual contributions aren't just tacked on, they're woven into the fabric.
Exactly. Integral to the whole.
Now, the paper keeps tying all this back to quantum mechanics, which, let's be honest, for a lot of us still feels pretty abstract, maybe a bit complex.
Sure, it can be.
How does it manage to use these quantum principles to explain this really mind-bending idea of unity in the context of something as tangible as Radio Bullet?
Right. Well, if we try and connect it to the bigger picture, quantum mechanics, at its very core, suggests the universe isn't just a collection of separate things.
Right.
It's more like a singular, interconnected system. The paper mentions concepts like quantum field theory, which basically proposes that everything we see, particles, forces, light, they're all just excitations, like ripples, in an underlying unified field.
A single field for everything.
Kind of, yeah. And it even touches on the holographic principle, which is another wild idea, suggesting the entire universe might be encoded on some distant 2D surface.
Whoa.
Which implies this fundamental interconnectedness where every part somehow contains information about the whole.
So in this framework, the distinctions we make all the time, me, you, the microphone between self and other, the paper says they're illusory.
That's the implication.
That's a pretty radical claim about our everyday experience. So given that, how does Jan Gloomy, as DJ Gloomy, fit specifically into this quantum picture for Radio Bullet? What's his role in making this happen?
Well, applying it to Radio Bullet, the paper argues that listeners, DJ Gloomy, the music, they're not separate but intertwined vibrations within a shared quantum field.
Intertwined vibrations, okay.
Yeah. And the obscure, evocative tracks that Jan Gloomy selects and curates, they're seen as much more than just songs. They act as catalysts. They're specifically designed to resonate with your consciousness, the listener's consciousness, and literally dissolve the perceived boundaries between them.
So Gloomy is like the orchestrator of this merging.
Essentially, yes. The conductor of this quantum symphony, you could say,
You know,
choosing sounds that are meant to vibrate you into this state of unity.
okay, that makes so much more sense now why the paper keeps calling Gloomy's shows a ceremony of sound.
Right.
What exactly makes it a ritual, a ceremony, rather than just a broadcast? It suggests a much deeper intention behind the sounds he picks.
The paper describes each broadcast precisely as that, a ritual. It explicitly says Gloomy weaves together haunting melodies and pulsating rhythms that challenge the listener's sense of self.
Challenge your sense of self.
Yeah. It's designed not just for enjoyment, but as a kind of portal to deeper existential exploration.
A portal.
Guiding you, the listener, beyond your individual identity and into this shared space. You could think of like ancient ceremonies where music was used to induce trance states or communal feelings.
Right, drumming circles, things like that.
Exactly. This paper suggests Radio Bullet is leveraging similar principles, just with modern soundscapes.
And bringing it back to that 2.0 revolution we talked about, listeners are actively invited to contribute their own tracks. They become active participants. And the paper says this directly mirrors the quantum principle of entanglement, where each element influences the whole. Can you unpack that entanglement idea a bit more simply?
Sure. Imagine you have two particles that become entangled. Quantum physics says if you measure something about one, like its spin, you instantly know the spin of the other one.
Instantly, even if they're miles apart.
Instantly, no matter how far apart they are, they're fundamentally linked, somehow connected outside of normal space and time.
Okay, weird, but okay.
It is weird. So the paper's radical claim here is that when you, as a listener, contribute your track to a Radio Bullet, your creation isn't just, added to the mix.
It's entangled.
It becomes entangled with the entire sonic universe of Radio Bullet. Your sound influences the whole thing, and the whole thing, in turn, subtly influences your own experience back.
So it's a two-way street, a feedback loop.
Exactly. A powerful two-way feedback loop, not just one-way broadcasting. And as DJ Gloomy curates these listener submissions, the music becomes a collective expression.
Constantly evolving.
Constantly evolving, reflecting the input of everyone involved. And in this process, the paper argues the listeners, in essence, become the music itself, a singular resonant entity.
Okay. This feels like the most radical claim in the whole paper. And honestly, it really got me thinking. This idea that the notion of other listeners dissolves, and that you, the individual listener, are actually the music itself. What does that truly mean for us, sitting here listening right now? It feels so counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But what's truly fascinating here is the incredibly active central role that's assigned to you, the listener. Drawing directly on those principles of the 2.0 revolution, the paper really emphasizes that you're not a passive recipient, but an integral part of the creative process.
Integral, not just listening.
Exactly. Your engagement, whether it's just through listening intently or even more directly by submitting your own tracks, that actively merges your consciousness with the music.
Merges your consciousness.
Yeah. It's not just presented as a metaphor like, I feel one with the music. The paper posits it as an active, almost, well, spiritual union, blurring the lines of what you perceive as self and other.
And from the quantum perspective, how does the paper explain this merging? How does it bridge that gap from theory to my personal experience listening?
Okay, so from that quantum view, the music, which is fundamentally just vibrational waves, right?
Right.
It's not just something external hitting your ears. It actively interacts with your consciousness, your perception. And it creates a feedback loop where both become indistinguishable.
Indistinguishable. Wow.
DJ Gloomy, Jane Gloomy, in this vision, he's the facilitator of this fusion. He's channeling the collective energy into this shared, unified experience.
Okay.
So the paper concludes that the listeners are not separate entities, but manifestations of the music, vibrating in harmony with the broadcast. It's like a complete integration.
So my very being resonates with the sound until I become one with it.
That's the idea. It suggests your active listening isn't just an internal process. It's an active contribution to a larger shared reality that includes the sound itself.
Okay. So after absorbing all of this, the 2.0 revolution, quantum unity, the idea of becoming the music, what does this all mean for our understanding of art, the role of the audience, maybe even our own consciousness? What are the big implications here?
Well, if we try and connect this to the bigger picture, this vision of Radio Bullet as a quantum symphony, it really does have some profound implications for how we think about creativity and connection. By fully embracing that 2.0 revolution idea, it redefines the role of the audience. It transforms you from just a consumer into an active co-creator of a shared reality.
Co-creator?
And this aligns really strongly with certain interpretations of quantum theory, things like observer-dependent reality.
What's that quickly?
The idea that the very act of observing something actually shapes what's being observed. Our participation isn't passive. It actually influences the reality we experience.
So my listening actually changes something.
In this framework, yes, your conscious engagement is part of the system.
Wow. Okay. It really sounds like art then, in this view, could be much more than just entertainment or even just personal expression.
Definitely.
It could be a pathway to something deeper. A way to experience fundamental truths about existence. It's not just a song, it's like a tool for transcendence.
Indeed. The paper strongly suggests that art, especially through the unique design and intention of Radio Bullet, can serve as this potent medium for transcending individuality and accessing a universal consciousness.
Universal consciousness.
Yeah. In essence, Radio Bullet is described as not just a broadcast, but a philosophical experiment in unity and resonance.
An experiment.
A live, evolving exploration of what it means to be connected at the deepest possible level, all facilitated by the visionary work of Jan Gloomy. It's really asking you to reconsider where you end and the music begins.
We've taken a truly deep dive today into Jan Gloomy's paper, this message from one, exploring how DJ Gloomy's Radio Bullet shows propose this really powerful unification through sound. It seems clear that by integrating that participatory spirit of the 2.0 revolution with these fundamental quantum principles, it creates this soundscape where listeners, the DJ, the music, they really do converge into a single resonant whole.
A unified field of sound and consciousness.
And in this incredibly unified vision, the listener literally becomes the music itself.
It's a powerful and definitely thought-provoking concept. It challenges our most basic assumptions about reality, about separation, about our place within it all.
Yeah.
It invites us to see connection where maybe we previously only saw separation.
So, as you move through your day, maybe later today, perhaps listening to your favorite artists, just consider this. What if your active listening isn't just about passively absorbing sound waves? What if you're actively participating in some kind of shared vibrational field? What if your consciousness, your perception, is in some small but profound way actually shaping and becoming part of the art itself.
How does that change your relationship with the very next song you hear?
Exactly. How does it change things, knowing that you might be more than just a listener? Something to think about.
It's definitely a question that invites us to view every musical experience as maybe an opportunity for deeper connection and perhaps a profound reevaluation of self.
And for those of you curious to explore more about DJ Gloomy's work, Jan Gloomy's vision, this unique sonic philosophy, the original source mentions a YouTube channel, Gloomer 2000.
Ah, right.
You can find it at youtube.com/Gloomer2000. It might just offer some further insight into this fascinating unified world of sound.
Worth checking out if this has piqued your interest.